Hey YouTube, we are back. I wanted to get this video out a little earlier, however it's been raining for the past 3 days and I just couldn't get it out there. I was actually doing this garden probably 4 or 5 days ago, and then it started raining on me and I had to stop 2/3 of the way out, but I figured I'll still do a little video of what's going on here. Behind me here is a bunch of raspberries that you can see all over the place. I got 3 rows of them. I gotta cut them down, or cut the grass around them a little bit, and then trim them down also. So no comments on that. And now if we come around here, I did mention in the one video that I had a apple tree in here and it got ruined by a bear. So if you look at this tree right here behind me, that's the tree that I was talking about. So you can see that it's all down to stumps. If we go a little closer to it here, you can see there's fresh growth still on it, and on these branches here I'm going to cut down the branches that are not have any new growth on it, just so that it doesn't draw any energy from the tree and it can focus on the ones that actually do have the new vegetation on it. Now this is the garden here that I was working on here. I have a stake in the ground right there, and that's as far as I got. And the way I planted this garden here was a companion type gardening where the plants kind of benefit each other. And what I did was just basically go on Google, or what I use is DuckDuckGo, and kind of just research what plants work with others. And that's kind of how I laid out this whole garden. And we're gonna go over kind of how I laid out this garden and what I planted, how many rows, and the spacing for them as well, so that you can kind of follow along if you've never done any gardening yourself. And then the next video I'm going to be doing is, you can see that I have a little sprinkler in there, and the next video I'm going to do is talk about the gravity fed water system that I have coming from the top of the property up there. And I just noticed this morning coming down, actually this morning we were sitting down for coffee, and out by the greenhouse I noticed a cow moose come up, and it was right by the greenhouse, which is probably about, I don't know, 40-50 feet from our house. And so that was pretty cool. And now that I came down, you can actually see the tracks of how the moose was just traveling in our garden. So I hope all the seeds are good. I'm not gonna rake it out or anything. It's just the way nature is. And the way it got in here is I have a little opening there that I close up before I leave for the day. So it didn't get in this way, but the bear must have got in here to ruin the apple tree that's back there. And so there is some fencing over here with big gaps in them, so I'm gonna have to pull all that up, staple that back into place, and get the barbed wire put back in place, just so I can prevent any of the bigger animals getting in here. I know I can't prevent the rabbits and whatnot coming in here, so it is what it is. So let's get to the rest of the video and on how I planted all this. Okay, my last video was the one for the upper garden, and I didn't actually talk about how I did the companion planting. I just kind of showed you how I rebuilt the garden and the plants that were planted in there, because I had some leftover seedlings. So if you haven't seen that video, the link will be up here or up here. I can't remember on what side it is anymore. So check out that video and then you can come back to this one. But if you've already saw that video, I didn't talk about companion gardening. I just kind of built that garden and roller tilled the soil and then kind of made my rows. Which brings me to my next point. This is our first year on this homestead, and this is our first year in this garden as well. And the first steps I took was to roll it till the whole garden, and I went lengthwise and I went widthwise just to break up everything, because again I don't know what the soil condition was, what was planted in there. So it's nice to get things turned up and turned over and get that all looked after. Now, before I get into the rest of the process here, you are gonna need two tools for this process here, and one is a rake that I use to smooth out everything in the garden after I roller tilled everything, just because the roller tiller did make its own rows and those are not what I was using. So I just used the rake and just smooth out everything. And the next tool you're gonna need is a hoe. Hoe? You can't say that here. We need to keep it PG. Now, the only way that this is a dirty word, this tool here, is if you don't like physical work, and at that point I can understand why, and you probably won't be watching this video on gardening. So this will be one of your most used tools when you are in a garden. Okay, so I did mention that I smoothed out the soil once I roller tilled everything. And once that was done, I measured out all my rows just to make sure that I can fit everything I wanted in there. One thing I am going to be doing is expanding the garden a little bit more this way, and I'm going to open up a couple other spots in the garden just to get some extra vegetables planted in the space that we have here. Once I measured everything out and made sure that all my rows were good and the widths that I needed for each plant, which I'll be getting into in a second here, because every plant needs a certain width of rows from the previous plant into the next. Now, I did start with popcorn, and I know that popcorn or corn doesn't work well with all plants, and the reason I planted corn first was because it's the tallest plant that I'm going to have in this garden. And what I did was, north is this way, so we have south that way, east and west. So what I did was I planted the popcorn on the northern part of the garden, so that way everything south of the garden will have enough sunlight and won't get blocked out by the popcorn. So I just did the one row that way, and we'll see how that works out. Now, with the popcorn, the way I planted that, I do have some notes here on how I did everything. So that way, if you wanted to try it out in your garden, you kind of have a description of all the plants, of the spacing between rows, spacing between the seeds, and the plants that I planted next to each other so that they do benefit one another. So the popcorn that I started off with, I did it with 8 to 10 inches in between each seed, or seeds should I say, and what I did is I put 4 per spot just to make sure that they germinate properly. And I did just the one row, but if you were to do any more rows, you could do 18 inches in between rows, and it's pretty simple to do. I just take a tape measure with you and go 18 inches from center to center, and you'd be pretty safe with that. And that's kind of what I did with this whole garden in here. Now, on the far side of the garden, on the west side, I started off with potatoes. And the way I did with potatoes was I used existing potatoes and cut them in half. So just watch this. All right, I'm going to show you how we plant these potatoes. And out of one potato, you could get probably about 2 or 3 growths out of the one. So if you look at this potato and you see these little spuds, or some people call them eyes, that's gonna be a growth from there. So what you can do is you can cut the potato in a way that you still have this, and then you use another eye for another potato plant, and so on and so forth. So something like this one here, you could probably get 1, 2, 3 potato plants out of just this one potato here. And the way you do that is you just take a simple knife and you go in between. So I got an eye here and I got an eye here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut that in half like that. So I got 2 halves. Now that's going to be 2 whole potato plants. And when I plant them, I'm going to plant them in the ground like this, so that this plant can grow up, and same with this one can grow up as well. One thing that is important about planting potatoes, and when you go out and buy them for planting, you have to watch out, especially in big box stores or large grocery stores. A lot of these companies, they'll spray their potatoes so that you don't have any of these eyelids or spouts or sprouts or whatever you want to call them. So it's important to get them from, like, say, a farmer's market, or when you do buy them from a grocery store, make sure that there's a little bit of, like, a nub on there like that, so you can tell that there is growth. If there is no nub like that, or they're completely smooth where the eyes would be, like, you'll see the divots. So if this one was sprayed, there would be a divot in this potato right there, and it would be completely smooth. There would be no hair there, there'd be no sprout or anything. And to me, those are the ones that you don't want to buy. You always want to buy ones with a little bit of growth on them, and then that you know, that way when you do plant them in the ground, that they do come up. Now with the potatoes, I planted those 12 inches or 1 foot between the potatoes, and I made the rows 24 inches apart, and that way that the potatoes, they have enough room to grow in the ground and they don't hinder one another. The next that I did was beans and peas, and that one was pretty simple. You have 24 inches again in between rows, and those ones I planted, I believe, 8 to 10 inches. I don't have it written down, so that one I forgot, but it went potatoes and then beans and peas. And then after that, I got into some spaghetti squash, and I planted 2 different types of spaghetti squash that were sent over from Mom. And with the spaghetti squash, I planted, I believe, 1 row, or it could have been even 2 rows of spaghetti squash, and I did 2 feet between each seeds, and then I did 4 foot, actually I think I did 3 feet here just to squish them in a little bit more, 3 feet in between each rows, but they recommend 4. I'll see what happens. The next I did carrots, and the carrots you can plant, I did actual carrot seeds, and the carrots I did 2 to 3 inches. The carrot seeds are very, very small, so you kind of can't just pick up one. If you do, you're a patient person, and that's not for me. So what I did was I just grabbed like a little pinch of, say, 4 or 5 seeds, and I tossed them 2 to 3 inches in between each other, and with that I did 12-inch rows. So after I did the carrots, I moved over 12 inches, and now I did some onions. And the onions, I used actual onion bulbs. And the funny thing is, as I was pulling, or when I received the packages, they already had some sprouts on them. So the cool thing with those ones is where you see the new growth, that's where you're gonna want to, or that's the side of the onion that you want to plant up, because that's the part that's gonna shoot up through the ground. The next row after carrots, I did beets, and I did, I believe, 1 row of those, maybe 2. I can't remember because it's been 3-4 days now. And again, I was gonna shoot this video the day that I was doing the garden, or the day I finished the garden, but I started getting rained on and I couldn't do that. So forgive me for my short-term memory here. But the next one was beets, and with beets, again, I did 3 to 4 inches and 12-inch rows from the previous rows. The next was radishes. Radishes, I did 2 rows, and that was 2 to 4 inches between seeds, and 12-inch rows again. Parsnips was 3 to 4 inches in between seeds, and 12-inch row centers again. Garlic, I did a pile of garlic. I believe I have 4 rows of garlic in here. Each row was 10 inches from center to center, and what you do with the garlic, you get actual garlic cloves, and you break up the clove itself, and you place each clove into the ground so that it can sprout from there. And those you do about 5 inches apart on those. And after that I did turnips, and I did 2 rows of turnips. Those are 12-inch rows, and 4 to 6 inches apart on the seeds themselves. Okay, so that was basically how I planted this garden out. One thing to make sure you do right after you're done planting, and I didn't have to worry about that because we got 3 days of rain, is to make sure that you water the plants right after, or should I say the seeds, right after you plant them. That way that they can start germinating. And if you don't, well, it's going to take you a lot longer to see any production. So this is 3-4 days of waiting period, and I still don't have any growth yet, which is normal. Now, one part of the garden I'm going to open up is the south end of this garden. So from that tree, I'm going to go over to this shrub here, and I'm going to open up all that so that I can plant even more there. And like I said, I'm going to open up this part of the garden here as well, probably another 10 more feet that way. And on the east end there, I have a bunch of plants that are not going to do me any good, and I'd rather grow some food that way that you know, too much is better than not enough, or like the old saying goes, better looking at it than looking for it, right? The next video I'm going to be doing next is on our gravity fed water system that I use to water this here, and I'll be going through the whole system of where the reservoirs are, the hoses that come down here, the hoses that we use, and basically you'll see the layout of how much water we get coming down here, how well the sprinkler works, because it's pretty amazing how well the sprinkler works with no pressurized city services or city water. So yeah, stay tuned for that. So thanks for joining me, and I'll see you on the next one.